that the kids from the Emery's Bridge Community Improvement Association please come forward to receive the 2023 Spirit of America Award. Thank you all very much for coming up. I'm going to go ahead and read the award really quick. The South Berwick Town Council presents the Emery's Bridge Community Improvement Association the 2023 Spirit of America Award in recognition of the restoration of the number 11 schoolhouse. In their mission to repair the schoolhouse, they have preserved the past, inspired the present, and built a future for the community. If you haven't checked it out, it's out on Emery's Bridge Road, obviously. Thank you so much for coming up here, kids, for receiving this award. I'll go ahead and this is hard. There you go. Congratulations, thank you so much. And just a reminder, every year we do give out the Spirit of America Award. So we are a year behind. This is the 2023 Spirit of America Award. Next year we'll give out the 2024. So thank you all of you for being here. Thank you to the Emery's Bridge Community Association.
Valerie,
Yes.
I think Ms. Cora wanted to say.
Oh, yes, exactly. Cora. I'm so sorry. I know that you have to speak. Would you like to say a few words? There you go.
Thank you for this award.
That's for you. You guys can take these. These are
Yes.
for you. There you go. Here. All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay, and then just a couple of things I'd like to touch on. So everyone was checked in this evening. Everyone should have received a pink card. When it is time to vote, when the moderator calls for yay, raise your card, nay, raise your card. This is a little bit different from previous years, but I hope everyone has a pink card. If not, you can check in with the clerk over at the table at front. We have all of our voters seated everywhere, and there's a very small non-voting section in the back. But everyone here has been checked in. I would like to take a moment to talk through this handout that everyone should have received that's titled South Berwick Annual Town Meeting, May 21st, 2024. To talk through this real quick, and I have a couple other reminders. So for this evening, meeting rules, this meeting is subject to the Maine state statute. Also, according to the South Berwick Council Rules of Order, no comments will be taken that disparage individual counselors, staff, or citizens, address specific situations that are in litigation, pertain to any personal disputes, or reference support or opposition for any candidate for political office. Additionally, when each article comes up, each citizen will be given one opportunity to speak per article. A timer will be utilized, and the comments will be limited to the relevant article only. Comments stray beyond the article, they will be stopped. To move on to the next section, FY25 budget summary. This is just a high-level summary of what we're voting on this evening. Row A is our budget as presented this evening. Row B is our budget from last year, FY24. Row C is our increase year over year from FY24 to FY25. And row D is our projected revenue increase for the year. So if you combine the expense increase along with the revenue increase, that brings our net expense to be collected by taxpayers down to $679,162 for 7.34% increase year over year. Moving on to the next page. I've included here our budget timeline. This just highlights all of the milestones prior to this point, and it highlights opportunities for public input prior to this evening. We held 2 public workshops where the public was more than welcome to come and join us and ask questions. Additionally, we also held a public hearing on April 9th. So just want to hit home the point that there were numerous opportunities for you all to weigh in on the budget prior to this evening. Additionally, there were 16 total iterations of this budget. Lots of work went into this. Even though this is a list of milestones, a lot of work happened in between, lots of staff meetings by our staff, obviously, and the council. Also included here is some fund facts, our undesignated fund. So just to note this, in order for the town council to use these funds, anything exceeding $10,000 would require a special town meeting. You can follow the table, just includes here what our balance is as of yesterday, what we pulled out of a designated fund for last year, FY24. And we typically do that to help with the tax burden. In FY24, we're expecting to redeposit about 700,000 of that 850,000 that we pulled out of undesignated last year. And that makes for roughly 8.2 million at the end of this fiscal year is what we're projecting. And then proposed this evening, we're proposing to pull an additional $50,000 out of the undesignated fund, again, to help with the tax burden. Also, another fun fact included here, our mill rate history over the past 5 years. Just like to note that the mill rate for South Berwick has decreased year over year over the past 5 years. This is set annually by the council in August. And another thing that's just really important that I want to land for everyone, just because the mill rate has gone down, that does not necessarily equate to a lower tax bill. If your property value has gone up, you may still see an increased dollar amount on your tax bill despite the mill rate going down. Moving on to the next page, page 3. This is just supplemental information to help you all this evening. Summarized here, some of our larger increases in this budget for FY25. This summarizes just the primary drivers. This is not a comprehensive list. Most of our increases can be chunked into one of 4 categories. Increases outside of our control, which you can see in purple. Increases that were specifically requested and approved by the town council as increases. Specifically, we did approve to add 2 additional full-time police officers. Our police force desperately needs some additional headcount. Moving on to the green section, we also had some commitments from FY24 that we had committed to including for this budget. And then everything, the rest of the items kind of got rolled into this other expense increases, and I have highlighted some of the larger ones in yellow there. One just typo note I want to point out with the bullet that says increased hours for children and adult librarian. The 52,000 is specific to the full-time increase, but there was also a part-time decrease as a result of that transition that I missed in this document. So the net increase there is actually a little bit less than 52,000. So hopefully this is just helpful information for everybody to understand what the increases are this evening, some of the bigger ones. And then similarly, on the back, last page, we have a list of some of the reduction efforts that the council took into account this year. We have several large reductions that are all itemized here. These were taken into account and removed from our budget for this year. And then lastly, in blue, these are a few items that were requested, but ultimately were reduced and not included in this budget. So that the takeaway here is that there were about $134,000 of requests that we chose to reduce from the budget and $125,000 of asks that were not included. Hopefully this is a helpful document to just summarize what all you're voting on this evening. Of course, the detailed specifics are included in our annual town report in your handouts this evening, as well as there is an Excel spreadsheet available online with all of the crazy detail. I'll hand it over to our town clerk in just a moment, but just want to remind everyone the scope of this meeting is municipal budget only for the town of South Berwick. We do have several department heads here to support this budget, including the police department, as we are voting on their budget. They are in uniform, but their presence here is to support our budget this evening. And just making sure I didn't miss anything. All right. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to our town clerk, Tyann, and we'll get started. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for listening to me.
Greetings, and thank you for coming. We are gathered to take action on the 22 articles as posted in the warrant in your packets. Article 1 is to open the floor to nominations for the moderator.
I nominate Mark Lawrence as moderator.
Second.
There being no further, I close the floor to nominations. I would ask that a minimum of 3 ballots be casted in as a warrant in favor. Alright, having duly been elected, we're gonna swear in with the words. Okay, right, well, you get ready?
I,
Mark, you swear,
Mark Lawrence, do swear
I will support the Constitution of the United States,
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Maine,
and the state of Maine
so long as I continue to be citizen
as long as I continue to citizen there. I,
Mark Lawrence,
Mark Lawrence,
do swear that I will faithfully
do swear that I will faithfully
discharge to the best of my ability
discharge to the best of my abilities
the duties incumbent upon me as moderator
the duties incumbent upon me as moderator
of the meeting according to the Constitution
of this meeting according to the Constitution
and laws of the state.
and laws of the state. That is the easiest election I've ever won.
Perfect, now being sworn in, I will give the floor to Mr. Lawrence.
So I appreciate Valerie, doing a little, introduction, and you all should have gotten this handout. If you haven't read it, take a look at it. It's an excellent handout on what's gonna happen tonight and how this meeting is gonna go, how to conduct the meetings, and how to go through the meeting. I'm gonna just go over a couple of items so you know how the procedure is gonna go this evening. I've done this many times. I've done it for the legislature. I've done it for corporate meetings. I've done it in 2 different languages. I've done it so many different times, I can't even remember, and I guarantee you, there'll be questions that I have to sit down and figure out each time. So don't hesitate to ask a question, and don't hesitate to inquire about what's going to be happening. So what you're at is, this is a, town meeting form of government. This is not like the legislature, it's not a representative government where you're elected to represent somebody. This is the purest form of government we have in this country. And you're here to express your own interests. So I encourage you to participate and ask as many questions as you want. There isn't a silly question. I've heard many questions before. I just ask you to keep your questions short and to the point, not to get personal, and keep it as a question, not as a speech. And those of you, I see some former legislators and legislators here, know what I'm talking about. You can't say, well, on this article, these 5 different points, and don't you agree with me? That is not a question. That is a debate. A question is, what amount of money is being appropriated? Where is the money coming from? That is a question. So I'll keep you to questions, and the purpose of the questions is to get you informed of what you're voting on. One of the primary principles of parliamentary procedure is before voters can vote, they have to be informed and know what they're voting. Okay? So don't be afraid to ask any kind of questions. There is a warrant, and the warrant essentially is, the limit of items that's gonna be on the, voted on tonight. You can't offer anything that's off the warrant, not on the warrant. And there's a process in town government for getting items on the warrant through the council or by petition. So you can think of potentially doing something like that next year, but these are only the items, we're gonna deal with. And I'd ask when you address your questions, you address them directly to me, as I explain to kids when I teach them about parliamentary procedure. I am like the teacher in the classroom. My job is to keep order in the classroom. So if you have a question, you say, Mr. Moderator, ask me the question, and then I'll ask if there's anybody who can answer it. Don't talk to the council, don't talk between each other, direct all your questions to me, and that just keeps things going in order. It should be noted that amendments to so-called capped money articles, articles which amounts of money is contained in the actual wording of the article, are limited. The amount may only be decreased. Also, ordinances may not be amended from the floor on a vote, and there are no ordinances on this warrant. There is only money items on this warrant. If you have a point of order or a question, just raise your hand and ask it, Mr. Moderator, point of order, can we do this? Can this be done? Can something else be done? There are no silly questions. when we get to an item, if you have a question, pose your question. We'll try to get through all the questions, so everybody gets informed before we have a motion, and then we have any debate or discussion of that motion. So unless there's any points of order or questions at this point, we can start with the first item on the warrant. The council is here to answer any questions. We also have department heads here to ask any questions. So feel free just to go ahead and pose whatever you want. So the first article is, the second article is to see if the town will authorize the town council to dispose of tax acquired property in any manner in which the council deems to be in the best interest of the town. And the town council recommends adoption. I'll just look to Mallory for a motion.
Mr. Moderator, I move motion to adopt Article 2 as read.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for Article 2. Are there any questions before we go into debate discussion? Okay, is there any debate or discussion on this article? So we're gonna go through our first vote. I'm gonna ask you when I announce it to hold up your pink cards. If I am in doubt, I may appoint a couple of people to walk down the aisles and count the ballots for me as they stand up. If we're still in doubt, if we're not certain, anybody, including myself, can ask for a secret ballot. You should have been passed out several of these, and the question came up is, we have 3, does that mean we can vote 3 times on each article? That is no. You can only vote once, and when you come up and deposit your ballot, it will be checked to make sure you're not putting in more than 1 vote. The votes will then be counted by 1 person in favor, 1 person against. I'll have them come up, count them with the clerk, and then those ballots will be sealed in an envelope. I'll mark the warrant number on the outside. I'll sign my name across the seal, and they'll go, as in Seinfeld, they'll go into the vault and be kept there forever for posterity. So let's do this first vote on Article 2. So everyone in favor of Article 2, just hold up your pink slip. Okay, those opposed? Okay, the motion clearly carries, so Article 2 is passed. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to authorize the tax collector to charge and collect interest at a rate of 8.5% per annum on all unpaid taxes not paid by the due dates, with 1/2 of the taxes due on September 30th, 2024, and 1/2 due on March 31st, 2025. The town council recommends adoption, and I will turn to Jess for the purposes of making a motion.
Mr. Moderator, I motion to accept Article 3 as read.
Second. Seconded by John. Are there any questions about this? Okay, are we ready to vote? Is there any debate or discussion? Seeing no debate, I'll just ask all those in favor of this motion, hold up your pink slips. All those opposed? Okay, this motion clearly passes. Article 4, to see if the town will vote to authorize the tax collector to accept prepayment of taxes not yet due or assessed. Any excess paid in over the amount finally assessed shall be repaid at 0% interest. The town council recommends adoption, and I'll turn to John for the purposes of making a motion.
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept the article as read.
Second. Seconded by Jeff. Are there any questions before we proceed? Okay, is there any debate, discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, raise your cards. Okay, thank you. All those opposed? The motion clearly prevails. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to authorize the tax collector to continue an 8-month payment plan known as the tax club, with interest waived for all members of the club making regular payments in accordance with the rules and regulations governing said club. I'll turn to John for the purposes of making a motion. I'm sorry, Jeff.
Mr. Moderator, I'll make the motion to accept Article 5 as read.
Second.
Seconded by Melissa. And I should have said the town council recommends adoption. Are there any questions about this article? Okay, you all ready for a vote? Any debate, discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your pink cards. All those opposed? Passes. Article 6, to see if the town will vote to set the rate of interest paid on overpayment of taxes due to abatement at 4.25% per annum as per MRSA Title 36, Section 506A. The town council recommends adoption. I'll recognize Melissa for the purposes of making a motion.
Mr. Moderator, motion to adopt Article 6 as written and read.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions about this article? Seeing none, is there any debate or discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? All those in favor, raise your pink cards. All those opposed? Okay, that article passes. Article 7, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from the undesignated fund for the payment of property tax abatements and applicable interest granted during this fiscal year. The town council recommends adoption.
Mr. Moderator, motion to adopt Article 7 as read.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, and the town council recommends adoption of Article 7. Are there any questions about Article 7? Is there any debate or discussion? Seeing none, if you're in favor, raise your pink cards. If you are opposed, raise your cards. Okay, the article clearly passes. Article 8, to see if the town will vote to authorize the deposit of all proceeds from the parking lease agreement between the town and Avesta Young Street LP dated December 12, 2014 and December 22nd, 2015 into a non-lapsing designated reserve account and to appropriate and expend those funds to pay any costs associated with the repair and maintenance of said parking lot. I'll recognize Jess for the purposes of making a motion.
Mr. Moderator, I motion to adopt Article 8 as read.
Second.
And the town council recommends adoption. There's been a motion and a second. Are there any questions about this article? Yes, and if you could just stand up and identify yourself. Do we have a microphone? If you could come on up. There's a little green button on it too. You just press that.
Good. I just not sure, who owns the parking lot, number one? And I'm sure everybody knows that. I just don't know who owns the lot and what kind of dollars are involved in this, this article.
So if you just identify yourself, I know you did.
It's Jerome Bashara, 75 Rose Road, Suffolk.
Jerome asks the question through the moderator. Is there anybody who's able to answer? Is there anybody who can answer?
I'm gonna lean on, the town manager, assistant town manager to weigh in on this one.
I'll recognize, Tim for the purposes of answering the question. Or I'll recognize the assistant town manager for the purposes of answering it.
We do own the parking lot. It is leased by Avesta Housing, and it is about $5,300 a year that they pay. They keep that in a reserve account to repair the parking lot as needed.
Everybody hear that answer? Okay, can you repeat the answer and lean wicked close to the mic?
Can everybody hear me now?
Yes.
We own the parking lot. We also take care of it. The money collected from Avesta Housing is approximately $5,300 per year, and we put that money in a reserve account to do the striping and take care of any repairs that are needed.
Everybody hear that answer? Okay, any further questions on this article? Any debate or discussion? Okay, let's have a show of cards. All those in favor of passing this article? All those opposed? Okay, clearly passes. Article 9, to see if the voters will allow the town council to utilize funds from the TIP account for the purposes denoted in the final TIP agreements approved in 2023. The town council recommends adoption. I'll recognize John for the purposes of making a motion.
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept the article as read.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Article 9, are there any questions? Yes, come on up and introduce yourself and ask your question.
Bob Johnson, Berwick Road, can you define TIF?
That's the $1,000,000 question, and Bob asked if someone can define TIF for him. I recognize Tim for the purpose of giving an answer.
Yeah, but
Can everybody hear Tim?
one second. TIF is acronym for tax increment financing. It's a designated area determined out by an area that we designated. We filed an application with the state. Within that application, what it basically does is it says any new growth, any new tax money from new growth based on the basis, based on this thing. For CIP account, CIP work.
Any other questions regarding Article 9? Any debate or discussion? All those in favor of Article 9, raise your pink cards. All those opposed? The article passes. Article 10, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the following amounts for the police services. Police Department / Animal Control, $1,606,190. Dispatch, $287,000, $87,055, for a total of $1,893,245. The town council recommends to raise and appropriate from the general taxation and other revenue sources, $1,893,245. I recognize Jeff for the purpose of making a motion.
Mr. Moderator, I make a motion to adopt Article 10 as read.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there questions? Yes, come on up. Ask your question.
Moderator, Chair Sharon, Road. That's a very large increase, 16.6%. I realize inflation is everywhere this year, everybody, but that's a big number. And your handout says you got 2 new officers for part of that. Is that all of it, or other things driving this 16% increase? Thank you.
Okay. So, gentleman asked a question through the moderator to anyone who might be able to answer. Chair recognizes Mallory for the purposes of answering the question.
So the majority of the increase on the police item, the police line item is due to 2 additional full-time police officers that were requested by the police department and approved. It makes up the majority of that increase, specifically, I'm not gonna be able to do the math off the top of my head. So the total amount in our budget for the 2 incremental police officers is $316,720. Some of that goes to the police budget and some of that goes to our benefits budget, which will come later. The benefits portion of that is $104,400. So I didn't do the math ahead of time, but the difference between those two, if you look on page 3 of the handout in the blue section, the difference between those two numbers is the amount that's accounted for here in this police budget. There are other things included in there, smaller items that I can pull up in a moment if you'd like me to elaborate on the smaller amounts.
And would you like her to elaborate on the smaller amounts? He's shaking his head no. Any other questions from the town meeting? Seeing none, any debate, discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your pink cards. All those opposed? Article 10 is passed. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the following amounts for emergency services. Fire Department / Emergency Management Services, $392,922. Water hydrants and fire protection, $329,709. Ambulance rescue services, $195,040 for a total of $917,671. The town council recommends that you raise and appropriate from general taxation and other revenue sources the amount of $917,671. Any questions? Okay, I'll recognize Melissa for the purposes of the motion. So let me get the motion on the floor first. I got ahead of myself. Melissa, do you want to make the motion?
Mr. Moderator, motion to adopt Article 11 as read.
Second,
Okay, so the motion is on the floor now. It's been moved and seconded. Let's have questions. Come on down. Suppose I could say the price is right, but I don't think that's appropriate.
It's the same issue. I'm asking questions about the large increases. And these three, one is 13.4% increase, the other one is 10, the other one is a big amount, 91%. So those are three big, I'm sure there's reasons for this. The only reason I asked is why we increase it other than just plain ordinary inflation. Thanks.
Okay, question is proposed through the moderator to anyone who might be able to answer. Or anyone who might be able to answer? Mallory?
to elaborate on the reasons for these increases, I'll just go line item by line item. I'm gonna start at the bottom though. Ambulance and rescue services, increase of $195,000. In the handout on page 3, it does note here that we started a new contract for our ambulance services, in fiscal year 25 that actually has quite a hike in the fee for that contract. It was something that we had advance notice of, and we planned for. We put about $90,000 in our CIP account to get ahead of this a little bit. Unfortunately, this does fall into that category of something that's outside of our control. We have sort of toyed around with looking into other options. For example, because we do contract out our ambulance services, could we bring it in-house? Not cost effective at this point. Unfortunately, this is a big one and we don't have much control of it, but our ambulance services are really important. That's the ambulance and rescue services. For water hydrants and fire protection. Water hydrants in particular is something that has been flat and static for years, but we did just hear from the water district that they have increased our rates there. Again, falling into the purple category on page 3, another thing that's outside of our control. Within the fire department specifically, one of the larger increases there is prior to January of 2024, our police chief was only part-time, and starting in January 2024, he has been moved up to a full-time position, which is needed. So actually, the salary for that particular position, about half of it actually was included in the fiscal year we're currently in, which is fiscal year 24, and the other half has been included in fiscal year 25, and will be there ongoing for the future.
Mallory, clarification, you had said police chief, did you mean the fire chief?
Yes, thank you. I meant the fire chief. The fire chief was part-time and is now been moved up to full-time.
Okay, I think I saw another question back here. Is the other question been answered? Are there any other questions on this article? Any debate or discussion? Okay, all those in favor of this article, raise your pink cards. All those opposed? Okay, the article prevails. Under Article 12, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the following amounts for public works. Town Hall, $110,712. Community Center, $80,512. Community Center Food Pantry, $200. Highway, $1,174,911. Public parks, fields, and monuments, $66,735. Town garage buildings, $36,100. Transfer station, $594,767. For a total of $2,063,937. The town council recommends that you raise and appropriate from general taxation and other revenue sources, $2,063,937. I'll look to Mallory for the purposes of making a motion.
Mr. Moderator, motion to adopt Article 12 as read.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Article 12 be adopted. Are there questions regarding Article 12? Why don't you come on up?
And Steinhauer, Hill Drive. Are we any closer to deciding whether we're gonna continue the transfer station versus single stream or an alternative?
Okay, Tamara asked a question to the moderator. Can anyone who might be able to answer? Mallory?
It's something we are still exploring. The transfer station, I think, it's probably isn't news to anyone, is a challenge for us. It's hard for us to keep it staffed at this point. It's not a project that we are writing off. I think it will continue to be something that will be an area of focus for the town council, but I can't answer much more specifically than that.
Are there any other questions? Yes, come on up.
Hi, Richard Lusenhoff, Hill Drive, South Berwick. My question is, I'm wondering about why the allocation for the community center food pantry is so low, given the level of food insecurity. Thank you.
So Richard asked a question through the chair to anyone who might be able to answer. John?
So the short answer to that is the food pantry basically is done strictly by donations. The town picks up the sewer for the building. That's all we pay. That's a contract we have with the food pantry.
Another question through the chair? Come on up.
Thank you all for coming. My question is $110,712 for town hall. How is that implemented with the renovation that's coming up? Is this just general maintenance or are we taking all that into consideration?
Okay, if you could just state your name.
Rob or your mom room?
Rob asked a question through the chair to anyone who may be able to answer. Mallory?
This is a line item that will always be in our budget, despite the fact that we do have this, project underway to figure out what we're going to do with this building. You will see, one of the larger reductions that we made was specifically, that was to our CIP account. But that's largely just maintenance for the building. Any, funds that would be going toward any of the, for example, the work that we're doing to look into whether we want to renovate or build new this building, all of those funds would be coming from our CIP account. This is just for maintenance, and I'm looking to my staff to keep me honest. I think I'm right.
Any other questions to pose to the chair? Seeing none, any debate or discussion on this item? Okay, all those in favor, raise your pink cards. All those opposed? Okay, the article passes. Article 13, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $99,800 from the Department of Transportation Highway Block Grant, URIP, LRAP funds, and raise and appropriate the following amounts for capital improvements, roads, and road bond debt. CIP roads, $280,000, road bond debt, $379,000, for a total of $658,000. Town council recommends that you appropriate from DOT Highway Block Grant, URIP, LRAP, $99,800, and that you raise and appropriate from general taxation and other revenue sources $558,200, for a total of $658,000.
Mr. Moderator, point of order.
Yes,
You read out for the total road bond debt, you read out 379,000.
378. Thank you. Even moderators take care of us. Any other points of order? Okay, and the I'm sorry, we did the recommendations. I'll recognize Jess for the purposes of making the motion.
Mr. Moderator, I motion to accept Article 13 as amended to show $379,000 in the road bond debt.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to pass Article 13. Are there questions? Seeing none, any debate or discussion? Seeing none, if you're in favor of Article 13, raise your pink card. If you're opposed, thank you. If you're opposed, raise your pink card. The article passes. Article 14, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $900,000 from undesignated funds and to raise and appropriate for the following amounts for general government. Town council, $9,250. Town manager, $246,925. Town clerk, $173,018. Finance, $139,659. Computer, $70,733. Administration, $243,699. Tax assessment, $164,826. Employee benefits, $1,714,100. Streetlights, $7,500, for a total of $2,769,710. The town council recommends that you appropriate from undesignated fund balance $900,000, and that to raise and appropriate from general taxation and other revenue sources $1,869,710, for a total of $2,769,710.
Mr. Moderator,
I'll recognize John for the purposes of making a motion.
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept the article as read.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that Article 14 be passed. Are there any questions about this article? Yes, come on up.
My question is, what should the amount be determined? Based on the balance you have here, that seems to work out to be about, almost 12%. If you increase it, and I don't know whether you're willing to increase it, if you went to 20%, that'd be about $1.5 million, and you still have $6 million left. It seems like the town has sufficient funds. Now, perhaps now you guys are getting interest on this money, which is good, where in the past few years that wasn't happening. My point is, I guess everybody in this room would appreciate the tax bill.
Okay, your question?
Oh, can we go higher than the 900,000? Can we go to like at least maybe $1 million? I mean, $1.5 million would be 20%. Can we go higher than that?
The question is, can you go higher than the 900,000?
That's the thing.
So he poses the question through the chair. Do anyone may be able to answer? Mallory?
This is a good question, and I think comes up every year. So I did cover earlier what our undesignated fund balance is, and it is well beyond the 900,000 that we're choosing to pull from it. We are required to maintain at least 3.3 million in that account, so that when every month we get a bill from the school, we have those funds available to cover those kind of, as we're collecting, revenue and expenses and tax payments. We did increase it by 50,000 from last year to this year. This has been a big topic of conversation among the council. We're trying to kind of strike a balance with doing what we can to lessen the tax burden for you all and us as well, but also to be, financially smart. The town many years ago, I don't know, 10+ years ago or so, our undesignated fund has dwindled quite a bit, and we've done a lot of work to build that back up. Definitely hear your point, and this is something that comes up every year when it's time to determine the budget. Undesignated fund is one of the last things that we discuss, because it is kind of a lever that we have to pull.
Other questions on this article? Okay, any debate or discussion on this? Come on up.
Can I make a motion to amend it and increase the amount?
You can, but I'll have to defer to the
I'm sorry, point of order.
council. Yes, I don't believe you can vote to increase anything. You can only vote to decrease something.
Oh.
So my suggestion is, if you're thinking about this for next year, get involved in the warrant process and suggest it in that process. So it's set to the level you think would be justified.
Thanks.
Okay? Any other debate or discussion? Yes, come on up.
Hi, my name's Debbie Garrett, South Berwick.
Can you pull your mic down?
Okay, there is no stupid question, right?
Yeah.
So here we go. All right. As I'm looking at this town manager, 46,925. Is that for one person?
So is your question, is that all salary and benefits for one person?
Correct, that's my
Okay.
question.
So, Debbie asked a question to the chair, to anyone who may be able to answer. Chair recognizes Mallory.
That's not just our town manager salary, that includes the salary of our town manager, assistant town manager, and administrative assistant. There's also some travel allowance, training, phones, expense, fuel, there's a number of things all related to the town manager's office in that budget.
And I guess, and the same thing applies to town clerk.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Come on down. I know you're not shy, Steve, so step right up.
Do I even need this one? My question is.
If you could identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve Einstein.
No.
Question is on the, once again, on designated, fund balance of, in this case, $900,000. Your explanation was that you want to have this buffer that's sufficient enough. Don't you have, a tax overlay fund as well? To cover if you're short on taxes, or if you miscalculate, that's around designated 3%, I believe the state wants.
Yes.
So that, Steve asked a question through the moderator to anyone who may be able to answer. Chair recognizes Mallory for the purposes of giving an answer.
Thank you, sorry about that. The overlay comes into account in August when we set the tax rate. That's not something that that comes into play when we set the mill rate. It does not get factored in our budget at this point. At this point in the process, rather. But yes, we do have a separate overlay.
Do you have a follow-up question?
So you're using the overlay to pay any shortfalls that you might have
You
between.
can direct this to me, Steve.
I'm sorry, that they might have, to cover any shortage in tax revenues versus expenses. I believe the overlay is kind of like a surplus fund to cover that.
So the question is, are you using the overlay to cover any shortfall between taxes and I believe the appropriated amount?
The overlay is used to cover tax abatements every year, so anyone who would apply for a tax abatement. And I'm gonna lean on Jen and Tim to add any additional color and maybe missing.
When we set the mill rate in August, that is when we do the overlay, and the overlay money will come out of undesignated. So therefore, we need the money to be approved to come out of undesignated for any abatements that will happen throughout the year.
Just see that is there.
Hang on, so let Tim answer his question.
The overlay is strictly used in the abatement process and is not used to offset over expenses on any expense line in the budget. Okay, that can't happen. The overlay is strictly designated for one thing. The undesignated fund is our rainy day account, is for disasters or emergencies or so forth. The only way, if we run a budget, let's say for instance, highway went way over because of salt, sand, and winter operation, we would have to come back to the taxpayers and ask for money out of the undesignated fund. So the overlay does not go for expenses. The overlay is designated for something when we hope to do that in August, when we set the mill rate.
Now, when you have
I'm sorry, question, Steve?
when you have, a surplus in a line item account, you don't go to town meeting floor to ask that that surplus from that line item be transferred to another line.
You go to town meeting and then ask for it to be transferred. Like line items. So I'll recognize Tim or the assistant manager for giving an answer.
It's not per line item, it's per department.
Okay, so you're not doing line item.
Right.
So in the state of Maine,
Go ahead, Tim.
in the state of Maine, we have two budget types, and it's in this, I think it's in here, it's in the main, there's baseline budgeting and there's line item budget. So towns that do town council management form of government or select board manager form of government, or those kinds of governments, they do baseline budgeting, which is what we're doing tonight. So you vote on a baseline, like we're doing this 2 million, whatever it is, per departments listed. So we can't go over those amounts per department, within those departments, that money can shift around. And a line item usually used by places like cities for the more respectively, Biddeford, Sanford, those places where the council has direct authority to change lines, where here we don't.
So that is,
Any further questions, Steve?
that fund then just goes into the undesignated surplus at the end of the fiscal year?
So the question is, any funds that are not expended go into the undesignated surplus at the end of the year?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
You all set? Okay, any other questions? Yeah, one up.
Rob Harper, Tamarack Drive. I understand the cap piece on the amount that needs to be raised back, I'm sorry.
Can you lean down a little bit or raise it up?
Sure. So I understand the cap piece, part of this where we cannot increase the amount to be raised. Back to a previous question, if we were to amend to increase the amount from the undesignated fund, then we could decrease the amount so that the amount for the warrant article would remain the same, but we'd offset the two numbers. Is that,
So the question is, if they increase the amount from the appropriated undesignated fund, could they then decrease the amount appropriate from general taxation and other revenue services?
Now, once these warrant articles are written, plus you decrease the amount, it has to go back to the council for a warrant article change.
So you can only decrease, you couldn't increase the other one. Is the answer.
so the handout provided regarding the definition of cap states the amount to be raised to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of X. So the capped articles can be reduced by the amendment. So we're voting to, we would make an amendment to reduce the amount being raised.
If you give me a second to read through this. So you're reading from the third paragraph, the second full paragraph on this page? Yep.
Well, that is cap. No, it's under the definitions, page 5.
Okay, I see it.
So while they're looking at that, Rob, just for the audience and everybody's knowledge, along with, I learned this over the last 10 years. In order for us to make a significant change for the tax base tonight, we'd have to drop $900,000 to make a percentage change. So we'd have to bring up the if you're talking with the way I'm thinking is we have to take 1.8 out of the undesignated in order to release it somewhere else to make any difference in the tax base. So that's the number we're looking at. If we want to decrease, it's almost $900,000. We'd have to come out of this budget in order to make a change.
So my question was procedurally, can it be done?
Yes, no, understood. I just want to make sure that when we're doing this and we're looking at 1,000 here, 20,000 here, the real number is 900,000. We'd have to take out of this budget to make any difference in the tax. That's all I want to make sure.
Thank you.
And while they're discussing, I'll just add a little bit here. There were many meetings prior to this where we were having these conversations as a council, and it was a public session where we were having these conversations about, do we want to pull an additional 50,000 from undesignated? Those are the times where we welcome public input for how we should be using those funds.
So to answer your question, I've looked at that definition, and my reading of the question says, if you read the last sentence, it says you cannot they cannot be increased like an open-ended article to see what sum will be raised and appropriated. So if there's a specific amount designated, it can only be reduced regardless if the words are to appropriate and to raise, or to raise and appropriate. It's only when there's an open question that says to see what sum the town will vote to raise and appropriate or appropriate that it can be increased. You follow what I'm saying? I'm not saying if you agree with me, but you follow what I'm saying? So if the town council recommended to see what sum the town meeting would raise and appropriate, then you could increase it. But they recommended a specific amount, so that cannot be increased. Yes, come on up.
So I wasn't asking if we would change that amount. I was asking if procedurally, we could keep the amount the same, and if procedurally, we could offset the two numbers if a motion was made to amend the warrant. So we would be voting to raise less money for that one.
So you're saying to raise which one?
We increase the amount appropriated from the undesignated fund while simultaneously reducing the raise and
And
appropriate.
that is a cap item. Because they're recommending a specific amount, the town will vote to raise or appropriate the sum of X. That is capped and cannot be raised. If they had said to see what sum the town council will vote to appropriate and left it an open-ended question, you could raise that.
So I'm not asking for an open-ended question to see what it would be. I'm asking if you could reduce the amount to be raised by offsetting it by the pulling money out of the undesignated fund.
You cannot, because that would require you to raise the amount that's designated to come from the reserved account, and that is a capped amount.
Okay, that doesn't seem like what it says in the cap case.
So in the cap case, it says to see, the example they give, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of X. That is a capped amount if they state a specific amount. So when the town says to appropriate from the undesignated fund balance, 900,000, because it's a stated amount, that is a capped amount and cannot be raised above that. Yes. So the clarification was made by the town manager is you could vote to reduce the $1.8 million and not raise the 900,000. The town council could then revisit if they wanted to take $1 million out of that reserve. Not tonight, at another time. So you can only move to reduce items tonight that are specifically designated. Yes, I'm sorry, Mara, Tiffany?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tiffany Roberts, Buttonwood Road, clarifying question. Capped money article. They give an example, but is it accurate to say that whether it is just to raise, just to appropriate, or to raise and appropriate, either of those three would be capped, correct?
Okay, yeah. Any other questions? Yes, come on up.
Tax
You can press the green button.
assessment is up a huge amount, 24, almost 25%, 24.7. Tax assessment's up a lot. I'm just curious what's driving that. I'm assuming it has to do with, I don't know, evaluation process.
So the question asked to the moderator is, the tax assessment line has increased by about $25,000. Can you explain why that is occurring? Mallory?
The increase of about 25,000 is pretty much completely allocated toward our assessing assistant that previously had been part-time and has now been moved up to full-time. Our assessing office is very busy and that assistant is very much needed full-time.
Other questions? Okay, any debate or discussion? Are we ready for a vote? All those in favor of Article 14? All those opposed? Okay, Article 14 passes. Article 15, to see if the town will vote to appropriate from general taxation and other revenue sources the following amounts for debt service. Young Street debt, $37,741. 2010 CIP debt, $45,723. Library construction debt, $107,375. Police bond, $275,765. Highway equipment, $27,143. Highway building, $29,980, for a total of $526,727. The town council recommends to raise and appropriate from general taxation and other revenue sources $526,727. And I'll turn to Jeff for the purposes of making a motion.
Mr. Moderator, a motion to adopt Article 15 as read.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Are there questions on Article 15? Yes, come up.
Alita Galvin, 4060 Reading Road. Myself and my room have a question. We're just wondering what the Young Street debt is.
So the question is, what is the Young Street debt? Anyone who may be able to answer?
I'm gonna lean on Tim and Jen. I believe the library. Yes.
If you could do that vocally, just don't shake your head.
Yes, that is for the library.
Okay. Any other questions? Come on up.
And we're Steinhauer Hill Drive. How much longer will we have that library construction debt?
Question to the moderator is, how long will the library construction debt last? Anyone who may be able to answer, Mallory?
I can see Jen flipping through her booklet to find that she's got all the info.
Okay, we'll wait till Jen finds the answer.
The Young Street library debt, the last payment will be in November of 2027, which is fiscal 28. The library construction will be the November 2025, fiscal 26, the last payment on that.
Any other questions? Okay, any debate or discussion? Show of signs. All those in favor of this article, raise your pink sign. All those opposed, the article prevails. Article 16, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the following amounts for code enforcement and health departments. Code enforcement, $102,788. Planning, $91,807. Historic District Commission, $500. Zoning Board of Appeals, $750, for a total of $195,845. The town council recommends that you raise and appropriate from the general taxation and other revenue service sources $195,845. I'll recognize Melissa for the purpose of making a motion.
Mr. Moderator, motion to adopt Article 16 as read.
Second. Second.
Been moved and seconded that Article 16 be adopted. Are there any questions? Any debate or discussion? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Article 16, raise your signs. All those opposed? The article carries. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the following amounts for public welfare. Social services / general assistance, $40,800. Excuse me, social / civic contributions, $11,500. Recreation, $158,841. Conservation Commission, $4,750. Library, $265,174. For a total of $481,065. The town council recommends that to raise and appropriate from general taxation and other revenue sources, $481,065. I'll recognize Mallory for the purposes of making a motion.
Mr. Moderator, motion to adopt Article 17 is read.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt Article 17. Are there any questions? Come on down. There is water for anybody who feels a tickle in their throat.
Again, the library's up quite a bit, the increase is almost 15%. I see in the handout, it is 10,000 allocated for, physician. Is that the cause that it's 15% is a big jump, even with inflation going on? Thanks.
So gentlemen asked a question to the chair, to anyone who might be able to answer. Chair will recognize Mallory for the purposes of answering the question.
Included in the library line item budget, there is an increase due to increasing our adult and children's librarian from 24 to 40 hours. The library is maybe now officially post-COVID and getting lots of attendance. And additionally, we then dropped some part-time hours and included in every budget across the board. There's also a 3.3% salary increase that's also applicable here.
Other questions on this article? Seeing none, is there any debate or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of this article, raise your pink cards. All those opposed? Article passes. Article 18, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the following amounts for capital improvements hyphen reserves. Highway equipment, $118,125. Office equipment, $8,000. Fire equipment, $87,500. Police equipment, $75,000. Transfer station, $72,000. Town buildings reserve, $80,000. Compensated absence reserve, $50,000. Land / code ordinance update, $15,000. Town clerk records preservation, $1,500. Assessing town reevaluation, $75,150 for a total of $275,000. The town council recommends that you raise and appropriate from general taxation and other revenue sources, $582,275. Chair recognizes Jess for the purposes of making the motion.
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept Article 18 as read.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt Article 18. Are there questions? Yes, come on up.
This is also probably a stupid question, but I figured I'd ask. The town clerk record preservation, does that include updating the rolls?
No, sorry.
Chair asks, the woman asked the question through the chair to anyone who might be able to answer. Recognize John for the purposes of answering the question.
No, that is just re-preserving the records that go back, if I ask Diane, 100+ years.
Diane?
Yes, so voter record keeping is not part of that. It is strictly for vitals, town council records, anything that meeting minutes, agendas, town town reports, I'm sorry, we send them to co-file and we get them preserved, like, get the Mylar pages and whatnot, and those things are involved.
Are updated voter rolls included in this somewhere?
I think the question is, are updated voter
Oh, I'm sorry.
rolls included in any other line item in this article?
Not at all.
John, you want to answer that question?
No, they're not included in any line item here at all.
Can I just add? This entire article is, for all of our capital improvement, funds. So this is essentially us putting aside money to make improvement.
Oh, I just considered that.
Okay, I have to talk to Mallory for a second. We need to go through the moderator. So pose your question.
Oh, I just considered that improvement, but that's just me. All right, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, any debate or discussion? All those in favor of this item, raise your hand cards. All those opposed? The article passes. Okay, on to the last page and the last three articles. Article 19, to see if the town will vote to apply the following amounts from excise taxes, non-tax general fund revenues, revenue sharing, BETE reimbursement and homestead exemption reimbursement to use towards the 2024-2025 budget appropriations, thereby decreasing the amount to be raised by taxation. Town council recommends the following applications: excise taxes, $1,445,000. Non-tax general fund revenues, $1,604,489. State revenue sharing, $1,255,000. Homestead exemption reimbursement, $450,000. BETE reimbursement, $13,000, for a total of $4,767,489. The town council recommends adoption of this article. I'll recognize John for the purposes of making a motion.
Mr. Moderator, I move to accept this article as read.
Second. Been moved and accepted to accept this article. Are there any questions? Seeing none, any debate or discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for a vote? Oops, I'm sorry. Come on down. Is that a question or debate? Question, come on up. We'll allow it.
I'm a newbie, so what is BETE?
Question is, what is BETE? Mallory?
I'm gonna request that the finance director weigh in or the town manager.
Okay, so. Any reimbursement is, here's my assessment, I'd like to ask the assessor to weigh in.
Where's the assessor? Come on down. If you could just yield the microphone for a minute.
We need a book. We need a book for all of these positions.
Yeah, I know that.
I personally thought it was a vitamin supplement.
Hi there, Berta Sharp, Town Assessing Agent, and then BETE stands for Business Equipment Tax Exemption. So the state is part of revenue sharing. The state will reimburse the town for items that have been accepted, a partial amount towards items that have been accepted.
Any follow-up?
So are these funds already in hand, or is this what you're anticipating?
Tim, you want to answer that question?
Anticipating.
Projected.
See, there are no silly,
Yeah, but great state representative who supports it.
there are no silly questions. Any other questions? Any debate or discussion? Are you ready for a vote? All those in favor, raise your pink cards. All those opposed? Okay, the article passes. Article 20, to see if the town of South Berwick will vote to appropriate the sum up to $200,000 from the undesignated fund of of the Great Works Regional Land Trust to support public access to the Salmon Falls tidal water property on Old Field Road. The town funds will be used for stewardship startup costs related to the Salmon Falls Tidal Waters project to include developing a management plan, engineer, and construct a parking area, trails, viewing areas, signage, and informational and educational kiosks. The town council will review and authorize for such costs submitted by the Great Works Regional Land Trust within the discretion of the council. This warrant article replaces the fall 2022 decision by voters to approve $250,000 in undesignated funds to purchase lands for this project. Question? Oh, I'm sorry. The town council recommends adoption. Mallory, do you want to make a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I'll motion to adopt Article 20 as read.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there questions?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes,
could I add some color on this one before we have questions?
color away.
I just want to explain this one a little bit further because I think there potentially could be some confusion. As noted in the article, this does replace a fall 2022 decision. So if you recall, in November 2022, on our local ballot, there was a question. The gist of it was basically asking if we could, asking the voters to approve $250,000 to come out of the undesignated fund, very specifically for the purchase of land for this Great Works Regional Land Trust project. I don't have the language in front of me, but it was incredibly specific, referencing specific maps and lot numbers, et cetera. The town, I can't remember the amount, but the town came out and very much in favor of this at the time. After that vote, what happened was the parcels that were listed out in that warrant article, that the $250,000 that you all voted to approve were supposed to be used to purchase, that land was actually donated. And so because the language in our ballot, I'm losing language, because of the language previously was incredibly specific, we could no longer give the Great Works Regional Land Trust that $250,000, hence why we're here today. And this is actually referencing a smaller amount for different efforts, specifically around stewardship. Additionally, this also builds in some accountability from a council perspective. Noted there, it says the town council will review and authorize for such costs, et cetera, which is something I'm definitely glad to see here. And I think that that's it. Hopefully that helps clarify what we're voting on this evening.
I think there was a question up back. Do you still have your question? Okay, any other questions? Come on up, Steve.
Steve Einstein, Front Street. I don't want to speak against this article at all, but what I do want to question is the 200,000 from undesignated funds. And the question is, to the moderator, I'm going to, what is the projection of the undesignated fund balance at the end of this budget year?
So, Steve, posed the question through the chair to anyone who may be able to answer. Mallory?
So this is included in the handout. We're expecting at the end of this year, we're expecting to redeposit about $700,000 back into the undesignated account. Again, that's an estimate right now because we're not there yet. And that would leave us with a balance of about 8.2 million.
So I'm sorry, I didn't get
Another question, Steve?
I didn't-
700,000 to be deposited back in after, if all these are approved, and that would bring the total up to 8.2 million.
Okay, because
Can
we
I just
Go
clarify?
ahead. Go ahead, Mallory.
Sorry, I just want to clarify one point. The 700,000 redeposited back in would be situations where we didn't spend all of our budget for that particular year. So that would basically be 700,000 under budget in addition to some additional revenue.
You want to answer that?
That is correct. Thank you.
So, if I understand it right, the system is based on overcharging for individual departments and items. So you can have the undesignated fund balance to be at a sufficient amount to use it again for the following year. Is that correct?
So the question is that the purpose of the undesignated fund balance? Mallory, you want to answer that?
I wouldn't say that that is the purpose of the undesignated fund balance. I would say that that's the approach that the council has been taking over the last few years to pull some out at the beginning of the year to help the taxpayers with their tax burden. And then if it works out at the end of the year and we have some extra money, we always intended to redeposit that back.
So one might say that the departments are,
Was this a question or debate, Steve?
it would be a debate, I guess.
Okay, why don't we save it for debate? Any other questions on this article? Come on up. Your question for the moderator?
Audrey Ford, again, 21 Rodeo Road. I want to be clear that I supported the purchase of this property. I think it's the jewel of the crown.
Okay, we're not waiting on this. We need to-
So
okay,
that-
question.
I would like to know, this is a blank check. $200,000 is a lot of money. There's nothing saying specifically what this will be. I move to amend this amount.
Let's, before we have a motion, let's have your question.
Okay, I'd like to amend.
Okay, so that's
To amend.
saved for the debate or discussion.
All right.
So right now, we're just dealing with question. Yes, John, go ahead.
Audrey, I could attempt to answer that a little bit. If we go back into the language of this question. I pushed back in the meeting to have some of these words in here, so there is accountability. Because when they came before us, they were just looking for $200,000 to go do upgrades. So as a council, we decided we wanted to have the say in what those upgrades are. So out of that $200,000, I don't want to pay salary for anybody. I don't want to pay for a lot of stuff. I want to pay for improvements to that property that'll make it better for the citizens. That's why we get a say as far as what they want to use the money for. The council gets to say approve it or disapprove it. And if that helps answer the question of we're not handing them a blank check for $200,000. We have $200,000 in reserve that they come to us with their projects and we approve.
Other questions? Yes, come on up.
John Costello, Boyd's Corner, has the land been finalized and purchased completely?
And the question is, has the land been finalized and purchased? Anyone who can answer that question, doesn't have to be just the council members. Mallory, you want to try that?
I definitely cannot answer this question with certainty, but I know that there's a gentleman in the room somewhere who can.
Tim Smith here. Tim, do you want to come up and try to answer that
Can I
question?
call it?
So this is Tim Smith, the president. Are you still president? No? Second vice president?
Yes, Tim Smith, I live right in the South Borough, Falls Town line.
Lean a little closer, Tim.
And one parcel this is the purchase of 3 parcels off of Old Fields Road. We did get one donated and we closed on that in January 10th. So that was a surprise. And then we're purchasing the other 2 parcels and we'll complete that purchase sometime this summer. So one parcel has been acquired. The other one will be purchased. We have the money for it. We're just getting the federal grants in line and doing our due diligence.
Okay, and you're speaking on behalf of the Great Works Regional Land Trust and your position as
Vice President.
vice president. Any other questions? Yes, come on now.
Hi, Shelley Landry, 41 Pikes Lane, Pepper. If this Article 20 gets voted down, rejected, what happens when then?
Okay, so the question, is it Audrey? Shelley, I apologize, Shelley. Question Shelley asked is, if this article gets voted down, what happens to that land that has been donated? Tim, you want to try to give an answer to that? Or Mallory's got the answer?
I can start and maybe Tim, you can make your way up and correct anything that I missed. My understanding is, given Tim's previous explanation, the land is still there, the land was, is in the process of being, all of the land is in the process of being acquired. I would imagine that the project will still continue, however, there will be this gap. In terms of stewardship fees.
That's correct. This $200,000 will bring us to the money we need to not only purchase the property, but do the improvements, to allow public access. It's been our point all along to have public access at that site, to kind of help out with the bond woods and so forth. So, yes, the project will go on, we still need to raise the money. Other questions? Yes, come on up.
Yes.
Yeah, probably should.
Debbie Garrett. Hall Street, next one. All right. The land has been,
Debbie, if you step up to the mic.
the land has been donated. Which has released the commit.
Just pull it down a little.
The land has been donated. Is there some type of an agreement that we must proceed with these enhancements as part of that,
Okay.
that gift?
So the question is, and I believe one parcel has been donated, and you said one parcel is being purchased. Do you have agreements with the person who donated it and the person who's selling it that you must do this stewardship on the land? That's your question?
Yes.
Okay, Tim, do you want to come up and answer that question? I'm just giving you your steps for the day, so you read your steps.
Tim, you should just sit right here until this is over.
No, there's no agreement with the landowners. They are donating their land. They contributed about $1 million towards this project. They did it without stipulations, although we certainly said that our goal was to have public access on the property. So it's not tied in. We'll still, if this is not approved tonight, we'll still go ahead with the purchase. We'll just have to, go on and continue to fundraise to raise the money for these public improvements. Other questions? Could everybody hear Tim? Why don't you go ahead and ask your second question, and Tim, have a seat.
All right, so my second question is, with all the improvements that we are expecting to do on town, there's a lot of renovations that I know are in the works. Is it possible to table this for now till we get, the town, all the other finances that are gonna be necessary? Or is this just total different things?
The question is, can this item be put off this year and done in a prior year, I think is what you're asking, and a following year? Yeah. Mallory?
In regards to the timing of this, there was some, kind of working with the Great Works Regional Land Trust. They're in line for a number of grants and federal funding options. And in order to move forward with those, they needed to kind of understand what the South Berwick contribution would be, if any. And so given that we did put this to vote in November of 2022, the town council opted to do that in November 2022. I've already established that kind of was moot, given that the land was donated. And so we felt an obligation to bring it back to the voters again this evening. And also wanted to kind of comply a little bit with Great Works Regional Land Trust so that they could meet whatever timelines and have an understanding of how much money they would have, with given the timeline that they have. So that was not intended to, it was just intended to make sure that given their timeline, they would have an understanding of whether there would be money coming from South Berwick or not.
Okay, so in other words, we are keeping
You're
our
right,
obligation, we're keeping our obligation and our commitment to what we have put our hand to. Okay?
Yeah,
So
I
there's
really
your question this way, the question is, are you keeping your is the town keeping its obligation to Great Works Regional?
The only obligation we're keeping to the town is by giving this article, putting it to the voters and letting them decide.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Oh, go ahead. Town council is supposed to know the answers when I ask the question, but you can go ahead and listen.
So,
What's your question?
Mr. Moderator, I was just wondering if a member of the council or a member of the administration could tell me how we reached that Article 20, that town council recommends adoption. And I ask this question because in the meetings that I've been to, we recommended putting this warrant up for vote, absolutely, but we never voted on it as a body. So to say that we are adopting it, I think it quite possibly could be unfair if there are some constituents that look to the council for a direction that, if they're unsure of a vote, that they might look to us for direction, and I think it's a little unfair to that.
Tim, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, we should have, the council voted 4-1. Correct? Is that the number? So this motion, you should have read town council recommends, 4, and 1 yes.
I think, just to clarify though, I understand Melissa's point, the council, the only thing that the council voted on pertaining to this item was to put it to the voters and for what the language would include. There was never a point where the council voted to say, to put our stances out there on where we stood on this item. So I think this is probably just like a little bit of a miss, and it probably should have just said town council recommends nothing. But just to be clear, the council has never, ever voted on anything related to this item other than to put it to you all this evening.
Yes, other questions? Come on, raise your hand and come on up. Come on up, do you have a question?
No.
Okay, let's wait for debate or discussion. Do we have any other questions? Yes, Tiffany, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tiffany Roberts, Buttonwood Road. I have a question and a follow-up directly related. Can I say them together to save
Why don't
some
you do
time?
that?
Okay.
2 questions in one, go ahead.
Okay, so the land trust services lease 6 municipalities. So the first question is, 1, do others contribute to the land trust? And the follow-up would be 2, if so, what is that bill?
Tiffany asked a question through the moderator for anybody who may be able to answer. The question is, do any other communities contribute? And what has community Southbury contributed up to this point?
All 6 communities have contributed, to purchase properties in their town for public use.
I think the question was, if any other contributed to stewardship, not just purchase.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, of all 6 contributed.
They've all 6 done that also.
Okay, and do you know how much South Berwick has contributed in the past?
Yes, they've done one, they did one contribution of $25,000 to purchase the balancing rock parcel off of Emery's Bridge Road. And they also donated a piece of property, also off of Emery's Bridge Road that now provides for parking and public access to that preserve.
Does that answer your question, Tiffany? Okay, other questions? I think we're gonna have some debate or discussion on this. Mike? Come on up.
Mike Latzo, South Berwick, Wall Street. Aren't there, I think some of the federal funds that we're looking for,
You can direct it to me, Mike, and lean over to the mic.
some of the federal funds that are being sought after. I thought that part of the requirement from some of these funds were that the town would participate, acknowledge their participation in this, to sort of say, we endorse this project, so we're going to participate by raising $22,000. So isn't there a participation part of this whole process here?
So the question is, and I think it's directed for Tim, you may be the best able to answer, the federal grants that are going for, are they contingent upon your ability to get towns like South Berwick to contribute?
Yes, that was true when the town was one of the first people to contribute to this project. And it was a great assistance to go out and getting $1.1 million in grants, both from 2 federal sources and the Lands for Maine Future. But since the determination by the town about needing to use that money for acquisition, we went back to those funders and got them to agree to accept the donation of the property as match. So it does not require the town to, there's no requirement here for the town to contribute that money.
Okay, did everybody hear that answer? Okay, you got a question? All right, oh, well, if it's a statement, we'll save it for debate. So any other questions for any other information before we open it up for debate? Yes, come on up, do you have a question?
Randall Holden, South Road, Maine, 325 Everest Bridge Road. Question on the moderator, first, thank you. I think they've done a great job on the needs, what we need, there is a want. Question I have to the council is, when we voted on this, this was approval of 250,000 for the purchase of land. And now we're asking them, now that it was given to us, now they're coming back and asking more money that they want to improve the land. Has the land trust, or have we ever passed an ordinance or amendment or a budget which gave the land trust money to vitalize certain things out of our budget? Or has it only been to purchase land?
So the question is, has money ever been appropriated in the past for the Great Works Regional Land Trust for other things than purchase, such as stewardship, what you're asking?
Correct.
Tim, do you know the answer to that? Come on up and why don't you answer?
The answer is no. Both the other contributions were, one was a property and the other was for $25,000 for the purchase of the Oris Falls Balance Lot.
Is there a follow-up question?
Yes, there is, sir. So I just, we as a people, and obviously you've done a great job here doing this tonight, because you've seen a lot of pink cards, so diligence on you to bring a balanced budget. This is a need, this is a want, not a need. I have no problem buying land. I think we should buy all the land that we need.
So if you're getting into debate.
But I would like to see if it's possible, however, to amend this is that put the $200,000 at a later date on the back burner for them to be able to purchase more land with that. And we can
So
build the other.
Let's save that for debate. That's really not a question. Any other question on what this article does? Yes.
Hi, Catherine Allen, Yorkers Road. With all the back and forth, and there might be a little confusion, I'm feeling confused in the back. So we voted in 2022 to give 250 to the Great Works Regional Land Trust to buy land, correct? But it was donated, so we never had to give them the money.
So we'll get an answer to that. Keep going.
So this is really just asking for us to cough up 80% of what we already agreed to.
And, okay, so go ahead, Mallory, you want to answer that question?
We have had much debate on this topic over the last several months, and there's been much legal consultation on this as well. The language in 2022 was way too specific that, given that the land that was referenced in the language in November 2022 was donated, it essentially nullifies it. And so now we're here today because the Great Works Regional Land Trust has asked for funds to provide stewardship on the land only. So, and the reason why it's here today is because the town overwhelmingly spoke to us and was in favor of this in November 2022. Given that the language is way too specific and that it essentially nullified it, the council felt it was our responsibility to put it back to you all, because the Great Works Regional Land Trust came to us and said, we don't need the land anymore, but we would still love your support in another way. And so we're doing that today.
Your
So
question?
just to make it concise, we never paid 250 for anything.
That's right.
We're just asking for
She answered that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, so let's open it up for debate or discussion. Come on up.
Hi, thank you. My name is Robert, I'm from Mountain Road, South Road. Great Works Land Trust on their website page, they describe this very accurately as this is an effort to conserve a unique 79-acre section of land in tidal waters, featuring a quarter-mile of shore frontage on Salmon Falls River, just downstream from Bond Woods and Hampton House in South Berwick. These lands and waters will support biodiversity, promote clean water, and preserve our cultural heritage. When we voted on this, we didn't vote on it to walk on it and develop the property. I think we should vote down this proposal so that we can turn it over back to nature. Very simple, but we should stay off of this property. Thank you.
Other debate or discussion? Come on up.
And Steinhauer and Drive. I came to 3 town council meetings where Great Works was asking for this contribution. But at no time did they provide any kind of timeline, any idea for which project, when it would be completed, what it could possibly cost, 3 times. And now we find out that the land isn't even purchased yet. So I'm just curious, there needs to be a whole lot of accountability with our tax dollars for a project that isn't even in the trust's ownership yet. And they don't have any idea what the projects are gonna be. Thank you.
Any other debate or discussion? Come on up.
It's a big shock that with this discussion, we just get through $1 million articles. And now we're talking about a $200,000 article that will do things as mentioned in the article. Management plan, engineering, construction, parking, trails, viewing areas, signage, all everything that makes this thing work. So, Great Works Land Trust has done so much, I think, for this community and everybody else, every other community is part of their organization. I remember doing COVID times when people couldn't get out and go anywhere, beaches were closed. I walked, I think, every trail they had. I mean, this is a great asset. And, you know, and again, I'm shocked at the time we're spending on a small number here and have to do $1 million of articles. Thank you.
Any other debate or discussion? I think you had earlier wanted to debate it, or you can come on up, and then you're next. We call this a queue, so you guys can be in the queue.
All right, Trish English, Academy Street. As I understand, you know, this was gonna tie everything together. I mean, I identified with COVID, one which was packed because it was the only park that was open. And there was damage done to that park. It was the only one that was open, but they made sure they were open and the Great Works Land Trust open. But the trails are traction aided, they're not connected. The the signage is weird, you know, there are volunteers frantically trying to, you know, keep up with it and improve it on a limited budget. And what this, you know, as I understood, this will bring in more, you know, more people to our town and connect the trail system, you know, in a way that we'll all be able to use it. And to me, it just seems like a lot of bang for the buck.
Come on up. Anybody else who wants to debate or speak on this item can come on up.
Kyle Holton, Belmarsh Road. I don't think just because it's $200,000, they should just be thrown in because it's not 2 million. Someone said before, and
You can do it into the mic.
buying the land is important. We should get as much land as possible. Heaven forbid we don't, you know, clutter nature with kiosks, trails, parking lots. It's not, there's a number of people in town that don't particularly like the way that Monica Medicus has gone, and to me, that just seems like it's gonna be the next step. And not only that, but the land won't go anywhere if we wait till next year to bring it up when there's more of a distinctive plan.
Next.
Well, Pearson, and Research Road. I think that this one sentence really says it all about where the money comes from. The town council will review and authorize for such costs submitted by Great Works within discretion of the council. The council decides what they're gonna fund or not fund.
Any other debate or discussion? Okay, is the meeting ready for a vote? Okay, Article 20, all those in favor, raise your pink cards. All those opposed? So I'm gonna declare it passes unless anybody wants me to count vote. Okay, this article has passed. Final article, to see if the town will vote to increase the property tax levy limit of $5,854,945 established for the town of South Berwick by state law in the event that the municipal budget approved under the preceding articles will result in a tax commitment that is greater than that property tax levy limit. The town council recommends adoption. I'll turn to Jeff for the purpose of making a motion.
Mr. Moderator, I motion to adopt Article 21 as read.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, questions? Debate or discussion? Yes,
Sure.
Mallory.
Just want to add a little bit on this one, and for those of you that have been to this meeting before, this one's always a little weird. This article references LD one, which is, in this article, in effect, is basically there so that in case our budget exceeded the LD one levy limit, we would need to, increase the property tax levy limit. However, we are well below, LD one, and we are $680,000 under LD one for this budget. So the recommendation here would be to vote this down because we are under the LD one limit. And I think I heard a rumor that maybe this LD one thing is going away in the future. But I don't know that for certain. That's all.
Any other debate or discussion? Okay, how many are in favor of this article? How many are opposed? It's pretty overwhelming that people are opposed. Okay, now the most important question of the evening, to see if the town will vote to adjourn the town meeting.
Before I make my motion and everybody gets up, look around the room. I'd like to thank you all. In 10 years of me sitting here, I've never seen a room like this, ever. Thank you. I'd like to see this more often.
Good, you want a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of adjournment? All those opposed, I think it's carried. Have a good night.
Thank you all for coming. What are the? Thank you.